Have you ever wondered why identical twins with similar genes can have completely different health outcomes? Or why some people seem to just be unlucky and develop diabetes or cancer despite doing everything right? The answer lies in epigenetics. In this video, we will be joined by Dr. Shaiya Robinson. Dr. Robinson is an assistant professor in the Interdisciplinary School of Science at McMaster University. She graduated with a PhD in cellular and molecular biology. She also completed a postdoctoral fellowship at the Hospital for Sick Children. Dr. Robinson's research has focused on epigenetics, specifically in gene regulation relating to health and disease. Now, let's define epigenetics. Dr. Robinson, take it away.
Epigenetics is when we have different levels of genes being turned on or off without necessarily changing the letters in the DNA.
Next, let's take a look at how epigenetics has advanced healthcare.
In the context of medicine, it's helpful for diagnosis or maybe even responses to certain treatments. We could look at a person's epigenetic landscape, which is like the epigenetic markings on their DNA-associated proteins or on the DNA itself, to get a sense of whether or not they would be more likely or less likely to respond to certain treatments, what is their disease risk. But also there are some classes of drugs that will change the epigenetic regulators, so the proteins that add these markings onto the DNA or onto the proteins. There are drugs that target these proteins as well to influence how those genes are expressed, the genes that are regulated by these proteins.
As mentioned by Dr. Robinson, there are now epigenetic drugs that can help restore normal gene function. Research shows that epigenetic therapies can help treat leukemia and other cancers. Before we get too far in, let's discuss how epigenetics actually works. Epigenetics works through different mechanisms to regulate genes without changing the DNA sequence. The most well-studied mechanisms include DNA methylation, which adds methyl groups to DNA and usually silences gene expression. Histone modifications alter the structure of histone proteins, making genes more or less accessible. Non-coding RNAs regulate gene expression without changing the DNA itself. Now, during our interview with Dr. Robinson, we discussed some common misconceptions about epigenetics. Let's take a moment to clear a few of them up. The first common myth is that epigenetics only affects humans. Actually, epigenetics is found across all living things. Plants use epigenetic changes to survive droughts, and bees in the same hive have identical DNA, but the roles, worker or queen, are determined by which genes are turned on or off. Even bacteria use epigenetic mechanisms to adapt to new environments. The second common misconception is that people think your genes are fixed from birth. Not exactly. As we've mentioned, while your DNA stays the same, epigenetics controls how genes behave. Think of your DNA like a playlist. You have all the songs, but epigenetics decides which ones play and at what volume. This leads us to another common misconception, that epigenetics is just another word for genetics. Not quite. Genetics is about the DNA you inherit, while epigenetics is about how that DNA is used. Two people can have the same genetic risk for a disease, but their lifestyle and environment can lead to completely different outcomes. That's why identical twins who share the same DNA can develop different health conditions over time. So, while you can't rewrite your DNA, the way you live can influence how your genes work. However, how much control do we really have over our epigenetic health? Well, to answer this question, let's take a closer look at what Dr. Robinson had to say.
On one hand, there's a lot that we can control with our environment with respect to our levels of exercise, the quality of our diet, how much sleep we get, right? There are certain environmental factors that we have a lot of control over that will influence our epigenome. However, there are a lot of other factors that are outside of our control that still influence our epigenome. And so my advice would be, because of these additional external factors that are outside of our control, these are like systemic things, right, in society, it's really important for the things that we can control to minimize our disease risk, to really have a good solid grasp of those things so we're not compounding our risk with the things that we cannot control. So getting a good amount of sleep each night, regulating your cortisol levels as much as you can by going to the gym, taking study breaks, eating a good healthy diet. Those sorts of things will all help to lower our risk of certain diseases and will also help to influence our epigenomes in ways that are beneficial to us.
Building on Dr. Robinson's points about the effect of the environment in epigenetics, let's further explore how epigenetics can be influenced by various environmental factors and lifestyle choices in more detail. Firstly, diet plays a key role, with nutrients like folate, vitamin B12, and choline acting as methyl donors that influence DNA methylation. Foods like garlic, soy, teas, herbs, red grapes, berries, and fish can also help counteract harmful epigenetic changes. Chronic stress triggers epigenetic changes that affect hormone regulation and immune function. However, practices like mindfulness and meditation can help restore balance and protect your epigenetic health. Physical activity is another powerful factor. Regular exercise promotes beneficial changes in genes related to metabolism and inflammation, lowering the risk of obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular diseases. Lastly, avoiding toxins like smoking, alcohol, and pollutants like pesticides and heavy metals is key. These substances cause widespread epigenetic changes that increase disease risk, but reducing exposure allows your body to repair damage and restore proper gene function. So, thanks to Dr. Shaiya Robinson, we've learned that while we can't rewrite our genetic code, the good news is that our lifestyle choices have the power to influence how our genes express themselves. By making small, healthy choices every day, you can boost your epigenetic health and set yourself up for a healthier, happier future. So, what's one change you'll make today? Let us know in the comments below.